Hello, just before we start this week's episode, to let you know that by far the greatest team football podcast is going off on its Bundesliga-style winter break. So we will be off from our regular episodes until the end of January. But we didn't want to leave it just like that, especially not at this festive time of year. So we have put together 4 little small festive treats for you over this period, slightly shorter episodes than the usual. Jamie, what have we got lined up?
Yeah, we've got some real delights, some festive delights. We've got your good self, Graham, covering the incredible Chesterfield story when they had their run to the FA Cup semi-finals in 1997. We've then got the wonderful Phil Craig talking all about North Korea, 1966, the incredible surprise package of the World Cup. Then we've got Declan Clark back with us, covering, and you can't believe he's getting his teeth into this, Manchester City, 1967 to 1970, a holy trinity of players and on the wrong side of Manchester, I like to think. But that's going to be a fun one. And finally, I'm going to be shining a wonderful light on Vancouver Whitecaps, the 1979 North American Soccer League playoff national champions.
So 4 little festive treats ready. They'll be coming at you over the next few weeks whilst we're on our break. We will be back at the end of January. And it's over to you, Graham. Okay, so welcome back. We are talking about the incredible Manchester City side of 1967 through to 1970. And this is, I just love this period because just the teams kind of coming from nowhere to win league titles at this point. Manchester City are another team who do this. Dec, I guess this whole story, though, begins with Joe Mercer.
It does. So just winding back a couple of years to 65, he takes over at City in 65 when they're still in the second division as it was in those days. They've been in the doldrums for quite a while, City. And he takes over having been in the managerial reins at Villa, who sacked him after he had a stroke, which is very nice of. Once he'd recovered, they decided, well, sorry, Joe, off you go. But bearing in mind that he had the stroke, he decided that he needed someone younger to sort of do his running around for him. And he turns, in this instance, to Malcolm Allison, who he's got to know from coaching sessions at Lilleshall. Allison, even at this stage, is quite the character. A real interesting, an enigma, really. He's just quite so far ahead of his time in a lot of ways. It's unreal. I mean, the sort of plaudits that he gets from the people he worked with, like Terry Venables said he's the best coach in Britain, bar none, that he ever worked with. For example, when he was a player at West Ham, he was getting into trouble with the management because he was criticising the coaching methods even then, and he stayed behind and he held court in some Greasy Spoon cafe with anyone who's interested and used the pepper pots and move them around the table, espousing his theories on the game. He just really wanted to soak in as much as possible and learn from other people. He was a big fan of the Hungarian side from the early 50s, the one with Puskás. He thought they were absolutely wonderful. And instead of, I guess at the time, a lot of the English establishment, it basically England, England are the masters of football, and there's all this exceptionalism going on. Not like today, of course. They really didn't want to learn, whereas he did. And he actually lost a lung to TB sort of halfway through his career. I think he played Sheffield Wednesday or Sheffield United, one of the two, but he took ill after that and he lost a lung. And he tried to carry on the reserve team, but he just basically couldn't. So then he started coaching and like mentoring some of West Ham's younger players coming through, including Bobby Moore, for example. And
Bobby Moore liked him as well.
Bobby Moore really did. He said he was a fantastic coach, a really great guy. He said one of the best coaches he's ever worked with. So we have this image of him as this flamboyant showman, but he actually did know his stuff. Certainly at this point, maybe the flamboyance took over a bit later, but he'd attracted a lot of attention And I think his job was at Bath City, actually, where he went to first. And they were non-league, and he took them to, I think it was about third place in that league, where he encountered a guy called Tony Buck, who was their right back. More of which later. Then he got a job at Toronto City, of all places, where he was hardly there any time at all before a lot of clubs. Obviously, what he'd done with Bath attracted a bit of attention. So then he went to Plymouth Argyle after that. And again, he did well with them. He took Tony Buck with him as well he took him from Bath to Plymouth. And by this time, and this is sort of 60, I guess it's about 62, 63, Tony Buck at this point is already knocking on the door of 30. And Plymouth didn't want to sign him. So he basically, Allison told him to take a couple of years off his birth certificate.
We've all done that.
Yeah, I might have done it a lot, but I've never actually falsified my birth certificate to get a job. So anyway, after a couple of years of this, they're doing quite well, and this is when Mercer decides that he's going to take him to along to City. Immediately, they've already got the nucleus of what became that side at this point. Summerbee's gone there already. They've got Colin Bell. He's got the nucleus of the side going already. They storm the second division. They get into the top flight in 66, 67. So they're going into the next season, 67, 68. They're not fancied at all to win the league.
There's a lot of good sides there and a lot of good managers at the time, aren't there? I mean, because presumably this is Don Reevy's Leeds, and is Busby at United?
Busby's still at United, yeah. They've got Paisley. Shankly, sorry, not Paisley. We've got Paddy Catterick at Everton.
Bill Nicholson is still
Bill Nicholson still at Tottenham.
I think Bertie Mee is at Arsenal as well.
Yeah, Bertie Mee, as he said to Matt Busby. It's a song.
It's proper legend stuff. So this is the kind of weird thing, isn't it? This period where all sorts of teams are kind of are winning the league, yet it's not like teams are rubbish.
I'll go one further. I'm not going to steal hopefully not stealing your thunder, Deck, but the top 10 in that season, I won't spoil the order, but it's West Brom, it's Tottenham, it's Leeds, it's Liverpool, it's Everton, it's City, it's United, it's Chelsea, it's Arsenal, it's Newcastle. Sorry, Phil. It's an incredibly strong, when you look at it and you look at the history of the English game, it's an incredibly strong top 10. I mean, it's a really strong division, to be honest, as well, when you look at the teams in it.
Yeah, and I think what City brought to that, the sort of gate crashed the party, if you like, but I think a lot of that was down to the coaching methods that Allison brought with him. The first thing he did was get them all incredibly fit. When he was at West Ham, he doubled the training. He basically told them you've got to come in 4 times a week. Imagine that, that top side you're training twice a week. It's unbelievable, really. But yeah, he increased it to 4 times.
That's more than England's cricket team.
That's true. Yeah, there's no going on holiday in between, like tests and stuff like that.
They weren't over-prepared.
No. Head tennis sessions and 5-a-side, because a lot of the practice games are 11-a-side. Then he's like 5, 6-a-side. He'd do that. When it needed somebody to work on, he didn't just have like fitness coaches in to work on stamina. He'd get sprint coaches to make the players faster. He'd train with rugby league teams to harden them up. He'd train with ballet dancers to like improve the balance from the boys, basically. So yeah, there was all of this in the mix. He was very big on diet as well. He was he was well ahead of his time in terms of nutrition and diet. And players getting rest. He was absolutely, some of the stuff he was unheard of. One strange thing, which it's Malcolm Allison, you think was probably quite apparent, was that he regarded champagne as the best drink. It was a what was he regarded? He said it was a clean drink. That was it. So it was all for the players having champagne. There was absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. So yeah, so they don't start terribly well actually in this season. They draw to Liverpool. Tony Buck misses a penalty. Then they have a couple of losses, and it's at this point that they get their final piece in the jigsaw, as it were, as Joe Mercer referred to him. They said when they signed Fanny Lee, they said to him, "We think we've got a really good side here, and we just need one more player, and you're here." And they did. Once they'd got him, they just started going on an absolutely fantastic run. They were on 5 on the trot. They had a little stutter sort of over the next couple of games where they lost to Arsenal, Man U and Sunderland, but they just carried on and on and on at that point, just winning game after game after game.
And there's some real sort of characters in this team as well, aren't there? I mean, obviously, Franny Lee is he hits the ground running and he is an entertaining player, but you've across the board, this side has characters and has, in Colin Bell, probably one of the most consistent players in the league at the time.
Yeah, when we think of this side, we think of that nucleus. There was a lot of the Holy Trinity stuff going on at the time. I mean, United, you had Bestlaw and Charlton. Then at Man City, it was Summerbee, Lee, and yeah, they were fantastic players. Lee was a fantastic striker, who's so quick, so strong. Over a few yards, 10, 20 yards, he was actually, his physique, he was quite barrel-chested, rotund almost. He just belied that physique with his speed. And also, I mean, he was incredibly skillful. He could stand up players and just almost beguile them just with his feet, with trickery. He was absolutely incredible.
Didn't he, at certainly a later time, I mean, he has the record for the most number of penalties scored in a season, and I think he develops a bit of a reputation for
practice diving.
71-72 season that was. 15 of his goals were from the penalty spot. And they had a nickname for him. If you're a City fan, they will say it's Lee 1, the number 1 Brapple pen, as in the match report. But it wasn't. Everyone else called him Lee 1 pen because he won the pen. Wow. Everything was going great until Lee 1 pen. So that became...
In terms of the diving, and he did have a reputation for diving, and again, I'm probably in a minority of one here, but I'm okay with diving in football. I've had some difficult conversations with people that absolutely will not accept that it's part of the game, and I get that, and that's perspectives. Franny Lee was a small player, and he wasn't a massively physical player, although I think he may have liked to brawl every now and then. You've got to use it to your advantage. When you're going against, weigh 25 kilos more than you do, you have to think outside the box. You can't go pound for pound from them. They're going to kill you all day long. So you have to think and you have to invent different ways. So he went down quite easily and he perfected the art and he won penalties because he was very good at either feeling the touch and going down and making sure the referee had to make a decision. And I think it's all part and parcel of the game. And except I generally sit alone in the corner on this conversation.
Pro diving last.
I'm okay. I really am okay.
The problem was you can win penalties with guile. You can over-egg things slightly. That wasn't Franny Lee. Franny, if you've ever seen Kes on the PE teacher who's pretending to be Bobby Charlton, Brian Glover, and he runs around, and the kid's nowhere near him, and he just flings himself through the air with his arms out, screaming for a penalty. That's Franny Lee.
Jamie having a take on supporting diving. I mean, nothing. I mean, last week...
I support it. I just don't disagree with it.
Last week, you were coming out and arguing against shin pads, a great conspiracy theory, which, by the way, when I listened back, you had a point where you said, there are never any injuries with shins. When did you last hear about an injury with a shin, anyone injuring a shin? To which I just accepted it instead of responding quite obviously. Well, there are no injuries to shins because people wear shin pads. That's why there are no injuries to shins.
Not many of those City players wore shin pads, actually. That's quite interesting.
What about What about Summerbee? He was another key player here, wasn't he?
Yeah, he started out as a wide man. He'd been playing at Swindon before he came to City, and he's playing as an out-and-out winger. But when they lost that first couple of games, they changed it slightly and moved him to the centre. And that tactical switch sent him on the way, really. Again, I mean, he could play out wide. He did play out wide a lot, but he was a terrific player, really skillful, quick, knew where the goal was as well. Also, great mate of George Best as well, which is quite interesting. You think about the sort of divide between City and United, but what people do forget that people like Summerbee and Best were absolutely great mates and business partners at one point as well, I believe. They had a boutique.
They were, yeah. I think they did. Yeah,
I hadn't realised that Stan Bowles was on City's books at this point as well.
Yeah, Stan Bowles was. Stan Bowles played 4 games that season. I think he played a couple in the League Cup, but he wasn't Malcolm Allison's cup of tea. Which is interesting when we get to what went wrong later on. It's interesting that Stan Bowles wasn't his cup of tea at this point. A lot of it was down to he felt that Bowles had a bit of a lax attitude, basically, and he wasn't too keen on off-field activities, mainly gambling. That was his big thing.
I think this is a problem with Stan Bowles. I mean, this seems, other than QPR, this seems to follow him around. Bless him, a fantastic, multi-talented player, really is. But I think he just came across as somebody you just couldn't rely on, because he would prefer to spend most of his time and his wages in the bookies than turning up for football matches on time. But yeah, great player. But yeah, this reputation did seem to follow him around, because we covered this in the Nottingham Forest team as well, where Stan Bowles was there for a short time.
Was it there where he I can't remember what it was there, but he got his signing on fee and lost it all on the dog track in one day, same day. I think
Crazy.
I can't remember, but yeah, he actually got moved on after him and Malcolm Allison had a bit of a disagreement in a nightclub. Might not surprise you.
Just go back on Mike Summerbee. He was also really good friends with Bobby Moore, which I'll come back to. But I just want to go back a few moments when we're talking about the Holy Trinity. When you're talking about the three big Holy Trinity in Manchester in the 1960s, there is only one. It's Best, Law and Charlton. But when I thought of Bell, Lee and Summerbee, suddenly I'm thinking we're turning into a folk band podcast, doing Irish folk bands covering like cardigan songs and stuff like that. But no, I accept that Mike Summerbee was a very good player, actually. I've seen a few clips of him and I did like, he was quite a grumpy pundit. But he was good friends with Bobby Moore, and that friendship got him a starring role in a film that we may have referenced once or twice on this. Mike Summerbee wasn't cast. Bobby Moore just said to John Huston and the production team, I've got another player I can bring along. And that was it. Mike Summerbee's in. He's in the film. Incredible. Escape to victory. Mike Summerbee gets his role because he's best mates with Bobby Moore.
Incredible.
His son was a really good player as well, Nicky Summerbee.
Yeah,
Played for Sunderland later. He did, until he had a bit of a liaison with Melanie Sykes and his form dipped after that.
Whoops. I wonder why. We talk about players in this era who, could they cut it in modern day football, and Colin Bell would have absolutely cut it in any era of football at all, because
his goal return over the period midfield is extraordinary, isn't it?
He had on his fitness deck, I was just going to say, he had a rested heart rate reportedly, from what I've read, between 30 and 40, which is absolutely absurd. That just kind of showcases how fit he was, and also mental strength as well. I mean, and what I like about him, not just the quality of the player, he was pretty low key. He didn't really chase the fame or the kind of the glory. He wasn't like his co-manager Malcolm Allison, who was very much happy to be in the public eye. Colin Bell was quite happy to sit in the background but be the absolute superstar of the football team.
Now, there isn't a huge amount of footage of this team, but the only time they appear on Match of the Day that season is an extraordinary game against Spurs, and a game which has come to be known as ballet on ice. And which actually makes some sense given Malcolm Allison had been turning to ballet as a training regime. But this is some fantastic game watching it back in. It is just incredible that they even played that game. I mean, there is just snow. It's a ludicrous pitch. Jimmy Greaves scores the opener for Spurs. He can't stop himself going into the net. He's on the slide once he finishes. It's just it's like watching a playground game. So after that slightly sluggish start, City hit their straps, and this really gets them to the front of the title in the title charge. But it's a really close run thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So at the end of the season, there's a three-way split between them, United, and Liverpool, all of whom can win the title. I guess for the last game of the season, basically City need to win, to be sure. They're away to Newcastle. United are at home to Sunderland, who are struggling.
Seems unlikely.
Of course they were.
But they're struggling at that point. And then we get an extraordinary spectacle, a real ding-dong game at St James's, where it finishes 4-3 to City. I think they were 4-2 up, I think they were 4-1 up, and then Newcastle came back with 2 goals. So it was a real nail-biter at the end. But they'd actually had news while this was going on that United had lost to struggling Sunderland. So basically they'd won the title by then anyway. And as it turned out, Liverpool won one of their last games, but then lost the other one. So they lost a chance to sneak in front of United as well. So yeah, that was a title all wrapped up for them. St James's Park. And it's interesting. You can get footage of that one. And it's interesting to see St James's Park in those days.
It's just open stands, isn't it? Open sides.
And probably empty as well.
In fairness, it was quite full, but it does look like It looks like a sort of almost something like, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of nowhere ground. It's just incredible to look at it. It looks like a minor league ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still does.
But this is another of those titles where these crucial games come out of sync. So again, I think the Liverpool could win it after Man City have won this game, but then lose that game to Stoke, I think. So there just seems to be all this around that time. Several of these titles we talked about.
It wasn't the last time that Manchester United have been left feeling desperate in Sunderland, listening to the Manchester City score. History does go on and repeat itself, sadly.
Yeah, definitely. So,
Aguero.
Sorry, Graham. Yeah, Aguero.
But so City win. This is their first title win in some time, isn't it? Is it 30 years or something like that?
I can't remember offhand. Can our stats chap elucidate?
Who's that?
That we do.
Yeah, they won. They have won the title previously, and you're pretty much nailed, Graham. 36-37. So 30 years, I think, give or take. That's good.
Now,
yeah, that's only their second title as well, by the way, considering the size and stature of Manchester City in the last 15 years. I just want to press home the point that they've always been a fairly middle of the road small football team.
Next season's an extraordinary start to the season because they win the Charity Shield in quite some style. I think they beat West Brom 6-1 in the Charity Shield and then produce possibly the worst league title defence there has been because they have a shocker of a season.
Yeah, it's down to the away form. They just couldn't win away at all. The home form wasn't too shabby, but just when you look at it, pretty much every single game they won, they played away, they lost. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, even Everton did the double over in that season. Although, in fairness, we were a good side then. But yeah, it's just an absolute. It's the same group of players. I think there's a bit of a swap. Harry Dow's gone back in goal. They had Mulhern the season before because Dowd had got injured. But it's pretty much the same group of players.
I think Tony Book gets injured as well, and I think that has an effect on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one win in their first 9, 3 in their first 19. Say. In terms of the league, it's a bit of a disaster, but they do still end up with some silverware, don't they?
Well, these days you might look and say, well, they were in the European Cup, of course, and that was bound to affect the form.
Of course, yeah.
And Malcolm Allison said he promised that they were going to, what did he say? It was something like they were going to terrorize the cowards of Europe or something like that.
Terrorize the cowards is the quote.
Yeah, it was something like that. And they got absolutely hammered by Fenerbahce first round.
Yeah, I think it's important from a statistical perspective to point out they weren't in Europe for much time at all. By the 2nd of October, they're out after failing to beat Fenerbahce in the first round. They draw the first game at Main Road and then they lose 2-1 away in the cauldron of Fenerbahce in the Asian quarter of Istanbul.
But they do, however, make up for it in the FA Cup.
With a series of 1-0 wins.
And I can't remember the sequence, but I knew Newcastle was in there. I think they played Blackburn along the way as well, didn't they?
Beat Newcastle. They beat Tottenham in the quarterfinal, and I can't remember who they play and beat in the semi-final. Deck, you're gonna have to help me on that one.
Yeah. Well, we'll skip that. Sorry. Thank you for the reminder. That was that was Tommy Booth last minute, I think. Not a better. So yeah, they get to the final and they play. They're fortunate enough to play Leicester City, who are absolutely at this point no grey shakes whatsoever. Their best player is probably the little lad up front called Declan Clark, who went on to bigger things with Leeds.
Oh, okay, yes.
But it's a fairly routine win. I think it's Neil Young who gets to go from across from Summerbee. He's just gone outside he's had a little struggle with the left back on the byline, managed to take the ball off him again, gets the crossover. Neil Young comes in and just smashes it into the net. One of the nice things that I saw while I was researching this, I'd forgotten they did this, and I don't know when they stopped doing this, but they actually had a live broadcast from the players' dinner afterwards.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It used to be standard that the cameras would be there.
David Coleman presenting it.
And it's pretty much car crash TV as well, because you can't really script it. It really is just being hung together by whoever was the presenter, David Coleman, in this particular instance.
And they interviewed Neil Young, and he's not the most eloquent guy in the world. It made me think of that that Monty Python sketch with it's like he's in the arts program, but he's interviewing a footballer, and he's like, "I hit the ball in it, Brian." Things like that kind of thing. But there is one lovely quote. The interview Malcolm Allison, and they reminded him of what he'd said about taming the cowards of Europe or whatever it was.
Terrifying the
He
cowards of
reminded him of
Europe.
that, and he was laughing about it. He said, "I think we'll get past the first round next year."
And they
And
definitely
it
do.
was very prescient of him, actually, that he.
Yeah, so the following season, the silverware continues to rack
Mm.
up.
So they don't have a particularly good FA Cup run that time. League position, was it? Did they finish second that year?
No, they finished
did
quite low
they?
down
Sorry.
again. I think they're about. Yeah, I can't remember. I haven't got it in front of me, but I think it's mid-table-ish.
Well,
I may be just saying what I want to say.
Well,
to
I
be
mean
honest.
10th
Could
actually,
just
because I think
making
that I
stuff.
think they finished about 15th in the season before, and I think they recovered to about 10th or something.
Yeah.
It was there or thereabouts.
But what we are saying is that their championship winning season was a blip.
But then they go on to win the League Cup.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that win in the League Cup. Now, I mean, they have earned it. When you look at the teams they knock out in that League Cup run, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Remind me of who some of those were.
They knock out, from what I can see, they knock out
Yeah.
Liverpool, Everton, QPR, Man United, all the way through to playing West Brom in the final.
They did, particularly. I think it's a semi, wasn't it? They took a United, this small team triumph over their more illustrious neighbours. Yeah, so they get to the final against West Brom, and it looks as though maybe it would have been another ballet on ice a few days before. When you look at the pitch, there's old snow around it. I think they'd had a blizzard, and then they cleared the pitch, and they'd put tons and tons of straw on it to try and drain it out. And when you look at it, I was just like, oh my God, it's like the world's biggest mud bath. The state of the pitch is appalling. So it didn't make for exactly. Well, I say that it didn't make for much in the way of skillful football. I mean, there's a lot of skill in it, but in terms of the end-to-end stuff, it was a very open contest. And I think City was like favourites, but Astle put West Brom ahead. Joe Corrigan's in goal for him, and he absolutely towered over Joe Corrigan, who, that's no mean feat in itself.
Yeah.
Long but high-hanging ball from pretty much near the halfway line comes over, and he just puts it past Corrigan. And then, even then, City are pressing forward, and it's like two prize fighters just like having a slugfest with each other all the way through. And then in the second half, City's managed to start getting on top. Funny enough, it's a strange thing that Summerbee gets injured. Absolutely filthy challenge, and he's lying on the floor for ages, but the play just carries on around him. And then they do this set piece, which is absolutely incredible, that Summerbee's involved in. There's a corner which Pardo takes, comes to Summerbee, and he's meant to flick it up in the air, which he does despite his leg hanging off, pretty much. It goes up, Bell nods it back, and Doyle comes in and slams it into the net. And it's obviously a well-rehearsed set piece. Just after that, Summerbee goes off because he could hardly walk. He was trying to stay on, and he was that badly injured he could hardly walk. So they took him off. We brought Ian Bowyer on, and that kind of opened the game up a bit for Colin Bell. And he'd had a quiet game until that point, and then he just started coming more and more into it, and you can actually see he's taken over, and it goes to extra time. And then in the first period of extra time, I think it is. Yeah, it's the first period of extra time. The ball comes to Franny Lee, and he's just teasing the left back in and out, and eventually he puts a crossover, which again Bell heads back, and Pardo's there to flick it in past the keeper. So City take that League Cup, and then because they've won the FA Cup the season before, they're then into the much missed European Cup Winners' Cup final. The European Cup Winners' Cup, of which they reached the final.
Yeah. Bring it back. Bring it back. Come on.
Bring it back.
Yeah. And they make it all the way through to the final, where they play Gornik Zabzar. Is that right, Jeremy? Have I got my pronunciation right?
I think it's Gornik Zabzar, yeah. City they navigate the rounds. I mean, it's only 4 rounds, which includes his quarterfinal and semi-final. And they come for it quite easily, really. I mean, they win one of the legs fairly comfortably, with probably the exception of the quarterfinal against Academia. But yeah, it's a stroll. It seems like a stroll for City to get to the final. I've watched back a few YouTube videos, and I mean, the players themselves talk about it like it wasn't a tough competition for them. It was almost one of the easiest things they've been able to achieve as a collective group of players.
They had struggled a bit against Academia, and I think that was also that that affected them in the League Cup final as well. But that was the hardest. That was the hardest leg up along the route. I mean, when they played Schalke at Main Road and absolutely destroyed them. Yeah. And then they're into the final against Garlic Bread or whatever they call it. Remind me what they called again. Gornik
Zabza. I will point out, season 1, we covered this very team, Gornik Zabza. We had a wonderful guy called Powell came on and brought beautiful light to this football team, who got to the final by beating Roma in the semi-final after drawing on aggregate in the 2 games, then drawing a replay in what would be the 3rd playoff game. So it went to a coin toss, of which Gornik Zabrza won the coin toss and won their place in the final.
So City reached the final of the Cup Winners' Cup against our Polish team, Górnik Zabrze. What happens, Dec?
So in a absolutely torrential rain, City take a 2-0 lead. I believe the first one is Francis Lee. Then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, is it Neil Young who scores the second one?
I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Neil Young who scores the second. And then Jabsy get a consolation towards the end. But it's over as a contest by then, partly because City are the better team and partly because the weather is absolutely atrocious. I mean, it's proper Manchester rainstorm that it's played in. I mean, the pitch is an absolute quagmire. It's just completely flooded. There was no hope of any entertaining football after that. So City got quite lucky with that, really, I guess.
So this City have an incredible run. That if you count the Charity Shield, which you shouldn't really, but that's 5 title, 5 cups or tournament wins in 3 seasons. Everything seems to be in their grip for a new golden era, potentially. What goes wrong there?
Seems to go wrong at once. It's quite bizarre, really. One thing that goes wrong is that there's a bit of a ballroom? I'm talking about Allison again. A boardroom schism. The guy in charge is an old guy called, what was his name? Albert Alexander Senior. He was a politician. He was like a local politician, Denizen of Ardwick, and he was like a steady pair of hands in charge. And he was Joe Mercer was his man, and along came Peter Swales.
So Peter Swales is part of this boardroom battle as well, isn't he?
Yeah. So Peter Swales has said to Malcolm Allison that he'll make him manager. Malcolm Allison's actually turned down a job from Juventus, an offer there to take him at his word. And as it turns out, that's not actually what happened. Mercer keeps the job. Allison's sort of a bit peed off with it all. But eventually it's sort of that comes to an accommodation. Swales wins the battle, but Joe Mercer gets moved upstairs. Malcolm Allison is then in full charge. And that season's team are leading the league. And they've only got a few games left. They're in March and they're like top of the league and they look like they're going to win it. And then we talked about Stan Bowles earlier. And you think, well, you've learnt your lesson about your Maverick. So he brings in Rodney Marsh, which is an interesting move. He kind of thought, there's a couple of things he thought, I think. One, he's going to put an awful lot of bums on seats. And also, it's like, it's our version of George Best. We can't go wrong with this. And what actually happens is he completely upsets the equilibrium of the team. They were playing as a well-drilled unit, and all of a sudden Rodney Marsh comes in, a fantastic player, but obviously he sort of ploughs his own furrow, does his own thing, and it completely upset the balance of the team, really. And they fell away and ended up finishing 4th. And Rodney Marsh admits it in his autobiography. He says, it gets to the chapter and he absolutely says, right, for City fans, yes, I did cost you the title. Completely admits it.
Brutal honesty.
But also at this point, you can actually see it. If you look at the 1970 World Cup coverage, the ITV World Cup coverage, Allison's on the panel. Like the other guys, they're all he's there, he's got like his Slazenger Ponach on. He's got his Fred Perry on. It looks really smart, like really sort of demure. He's got his stay pressed on, really quite smart, really quite professional. When it gets to the 74 one, it's all massive big collar shirts and frilly this and frilly that, and he's spending more time in the clubs and he's wearing fur coats and he's smoking his big cigars and he's drinking his champagne. He ends up with gets his fedora that he's known for. all that business. This is where it sort of takes over him, really, to the detriment of the team.
Yeah.
And though they're sort of there or thereabouts for a couple of seasons, eventually he gets fed up at it and he just decides that's enough and he goes off to Palace to wreak havoc there.
So this glorious period, we should get to ranking this Manchester City side. Jamie, where do you want to go with this one?
Where do I want to go? It might be different to where I feel I should go. Do you know what? In fairness, they've come up from the second division. They've stabilised. They've won the first division. That's incredible. By any stretch of imagination, we've covered teams this season, actually, Derby, Nottingham Forest, as a Slatan last week, who have done something very similar. They win the FA Cup, which is still a major trophy to win. It was the only game televised live. In fact, their Cup Winners' Cup game wasn't televised live because the FA Cup was being televised live, the replay. So you didn't even see their Cup Winners' Cup in all the glorious rain. And then they won a League Cup as well in between. I do think they fall away quite spectacularly. I think the champagne lifestyle for Allison catches up on him. He is a dedicated follower of fashion with a beautiful hat collection. So it's fleeting. It's a small period. I think I should put them in true greats because there's something about them that tells me they are true greats because they do have some fantastic players, Colin Bell in particular. But I'm going to put them in touch of greatness and see where we get to.
Phil, can you correct that wrong, please?
Well, I do like the idea of teams being promoted from the second division into the first division, or even now the Premier League stabilising and going on to win trophies. That's a really appealing kind of story to me, really. But I don't know. It kind of, the way it seems like kind of there's a bit of a flash and it kind of doesn't quite kind of. I always like the kind of more sustainable underdogs like Chesterfield, or where people do it over a good number of years and they don't get kind of drawn away by big hats and fancy Macs. So I'm going to go for touch of greatness.
Touch of greatness. How are you ranking them, Deck?
Well, bearing in mind where they came from, bearing in mind what they achieved. I mean, they did bumble along. They did win a couple of things after that. League Cup with the goal from Dennis Stewart, which Phil might remember. Goodness, where do we put them? I'd put them true great, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm a fan of them. I like this team, and I think a bit of the fedora action. I think Jamie, you're just gonna have to suck this one up. I'm gonna say, go on, come back.
Not based on what the assistant manager is wearing on his head.
Very much so. He's done it with style.
If only Tommy Cooper had gone into football management,
how many football managers do you know who got a porn star in the team bath? True great.
This is definitely true. We say Manchester City 67 to 70. True greats. So there we have it, another team ranked. We are, of course, on our midwinter Bundesliga style break, as I like to call it, recovering from our Christmas and New Year festivities. But whilst we're away, you can keep in touch with us and what we're doing, not just with the archive of our various podcasts on the podcast feed, but Jamie, we've got somewhere else people can go and have a look. We've got a website.
We do have a website, Graham, thegreatnessindex.com. That is our new website where you can go and see all of the teams that we've ranked with small stories, some additional information, some lovely football kits, and a whole load of goodies and blogs and delight. Yeah, so get to thegreatnessindex.com, our website, and please reach out. Let us know what you think. We hope to be growing that website over the coming months.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get to us on all our usual social channels. That's Said and Done and Couch Pundito. Mostly, I think Blue Sky is probably are the one we're mostly in, but we're also on Insta with by far the greatest team as well. So that's it for this week. Next up, we're going back to 1966 and North Korea.